Sup, homies? My name is Mike S, and I'd like to introduce you to KrystalBallz. I'm just going to go ahead and introduce you to KBZ here. So in this query, I ask for any companies that generate gift cards, either as a platform or have been funded and just do gift cards generally. You can see in the results that we get on me, the name of the company, and then I'm going to ask KBZ who on me is. And so in two easy queries, are there a gift company? And then find information about that gift company, we get an answer. Now let's try doing this in ChatGPT. So same query, any companies create a gift card company. And one major problem you'll notice immediately is just all this text. And it's talking about Stripe, which is not related to startups in particular. And just by and large, I don't have as fluid a response. So I just wanted to give it to you up front, an introduction to KBZ. No worries, we're gonna do a demo near the end of the video. I'm also gonna put all the links in the description. KBZ in a nutshell is a conversational interface on top of funding data. So we're going to explore what that means. I'm going to go through LangGraph. I'm going to go through the database and the infrastructure used for this product. And hopefully at the end, you can give KBZ a shot. So here we are again at KrystalBallz.xyz. And I just want to say which companies received funding in December. Okay. And this is just going to be my interface to ask about recent funding announcements and to ask about specific companies that have been funded. And so while she's looking that up, I just wanted to remind folks about a video I did 3 months ago called Google Falls Short. So he builds his own search engine. That was about a gentleman named Wilson Lind, who basically created his own Google search. In fact, this article was the inspiration in part for KBZ because there are just a lack of faculty associated with finding information that I really needed to see. And so now we revisit KBZ. We asked which companies received funding in December. Today, as of the recording, we're December 21st. So we see all the companies that have already received a round of funding in December. And by the way, this is extraordinary relative to recent months. Number of companies, or how many companies were funded in November. We should get a list for that. But the long and short of it is that it's been a very active month. If you look at the analysis, after KBZ responds with the companies, it'll also tell you some broad discussion about the funding in that period of time. In this case, it's talking about OpenAI, who did their huge $100 billion round here in December of 2025. But broadly, it'll provide some insight. In fact, the agents prompted to do it that way. We look at November. In 30 days, we had, in fact, 18 major funding announcements. So already through the third week of December, we have more companies funded than we did in all of November. So the basic architecture or system for KBZ is we scrape articles. Those articles are then posted to MongoDB using a data structure that I've set for them. Then I've created a few agents in LangGraph, and using next.js, I'm able to interface with those agents to answer the range of queries that I might have. So starting with the scrape, this is a local application. It's actually an admin portal for KBZ. I've been using this every day on my stream. It's my window, my crystal ball, if you will, to what's happening in the world of tech. Who's getting funded? What repos are trending on GitHub? What GitHub repos? What models are trending? Broad news. And then the original version of KBZ was just a tab here in the Streamlit application. But you can see here when I hit update data, it'll scrape the internet to find funding stories. It'll then take those results and throw them in MongoDB. It's finishing the query right now. And so this database is a data set of any company which has raised a round of funding. There's been an article posted to the internet and has been scraped by my application. And so this forms the backbone of KBZ. So I can say, who is Suno, for example, and that will interface with the database that originally was an article about Suno. Suno actually just did a recent round, a $200 million round, right before their lawsuit settled. So getting back to the system, I want to talk a little about the LangGraph implementation. Now, how this application works is we have a general graph, right, for the agentic flow. And basically, your response is handled by one of 3 different agents. Let's just look at the basic agent. So if the incoming request is not parsed for either a temporal or time agent or a RAG or genic RAG, it will be routed to this bunny. And you'll get Oracle's wisdom. It'll say, it seems like your message may have been in error. And again, that is the result of not being a temporal case or a RAG case. And I'm going to show you what those two cases are right now. The temporal case is the prints. Now, a lot of this was done tongue-in-cheek, but also it's illustrative. So we can get the temporal prints by asking any questions relating to time. Now, you've seen these before, but I'll throw them up real quick. Who was funded this past week? And so the crystal ball will oscillate or animate, and then we'll get a list of companies that have been funded in the past week. First, it parses out the time period, and then we see the list. And of course, we see our old friend, the prints right there. Now, I want to walk through the graph for the prints. Here's what happens. You make a query. One agent picks it up. It extracts out the time. That's why in this query, who was funded this past week, we first see the time period. And that was far more challenging than I would have thought. It took a few iterations. Ultimately, I set it on this pattern for the extraction. So it makes an extraction. It validates. And so all these square box here are nodes. Also, the dashed lines are conditional edges in LangGraph, and the full lines are edges in LangGraph. But a time period is extracted. It's validated, and it'll do this up to 2 times. If it fails to validate itself, then it'll retry. And at a certain point, if it's happy or satisfied with the extraction, it'll move it on to the temporal advice agent. And the temporal advice agent is the inference at the bottom, as well as doing the MongoDB query. So there are tool calls in this LangGraph. They're mainly coming here at the temporal advice. And in effect, the agent, not me, queries the database, the Mongo database where the companies are stored, after an agent previously extracts it. And the same is true for the RAG agent, the Dragon. The Dragon agent's my favorite. I was really struggling with the agentic RAG. Let's just get one out here. Let's say, who is Udly? Because I actually don't even know. It must have just came in. Udly. Let's see if it was able to get that, because I didn't even spell Udly correct. I'll try again if that query doesn't work. And then we'll talk about the agentic RAG. But I was struggling with this. Oh, it got it. Udly is an AI-powered experiential learning platform that simulates real-world scenarios such as sales calls, leadership coaching, and interviews. Wow, this is a pretty good application. I would say there's a lot of, it looks like they raised $40 million, same as Agento, Agento, who recently raised that same amount. I would say simulation just broadly is a really good space. Anything with agents and customer service, Sam Altman himself talks about customer service being the prime use case. And I would say broadly, the data shows that. If you look at the companies that have been funded, Alex comes to mind, but Alex is an AI recruiting agent. Fleetworks as well comes to mind. They raised $17 million, and they're a voice agentic workflow in the logistics space. But broadly here, the RAG agent, which handles all the inquiries specific to a company, took a while to implement. And the reason is, and I can prove that, like the actual original version of RAG on the Streamlit application was never super successful implementing RAG. And for those of you who don't know, I'd be happy to do a RAG video at some point. But suffice to say right here, by implementing agentic RAG for both the temporal agent and the agentic RAG, we are able to get this reliable flow where we have different agents answering one query, and they're basically checking up on each other. Another way to say this is LLM as a judge. And there's really good ways to do it that you may or may not have been exposed to. And I'd happy to go into this in greater depth, but suffice to say, the original RAG flow was pretty difficult until I updated my skills. I leveled up my skills with LangGraph. Last bit here, I just wanted to go over some more learnings that I had while building this product. Real quick, why you might want to follow the flow of money. I mean, there's numerous reasons. One reason is you might want to, if you're building something, you might want to see what investors are investing in. You might want to establish connections with folks. So Memories.ai raised $8 million in June. They appeared in KBZ. You can see here they're a video AI startup that manages like AI agents and for video, like to create a marketing video, let's say. Another company that raised $17 million, I think I mentioned them a bit ago, but it's called Fleetworks. And with Fleetworks, oh, I ran out. I got rate limited. Give me 1 second. So I got rate limited. You see a number of prophecies here in the corner. You have 10 per day. So you can make 10 queries if you're curious about doing some research. Who got funded this week? Is there a company that's like mine? Whatever it might be. There's no guest login, so anybody can use it. It's a kind of a clever way to express the rate limiting, but the functionality of the prophecies is the same as a rate limiter would work. I'll just say this. I put the rate limiter on the client. So if you could figure out how to bypass it, that would be a sick endeavor. Last thing I was talking about was memories. And then I also want to mention Fleetworks. So here's the setup. The setup is this. You might want to know about which companies are funded because you might want to develop relationships. You might be looking for work. And as soon as a company raises money, they're ready to hire. It's like legitimately that's the order. They raise money so they can hire. And so by knowing where the money's going, you can potentially get yourself a job or at least make some connections. One thing I've noticed is that startups, particularly seed round companies, they're very easy to communicate with. So you can see here, Fleetworks is a company developing a marketplace that uses AI to faster matches between carriers, companies, and goods that need to be moved. Basically an AI, voice AI for logistics. And so in both the case of Memories and Fleetworks, I saw that they got funded on KBZ. So I gave them a call. And in both cases, here's the case. In Fleetworks, I got to have a conversation with some folks there. And Memories, I got a pretty good relationship with. They were very cool to talk to and introduce myself and for them to give me access to their API. So just a thought, if you're looking to expand your network, if you're looking to maybe get a job, if you're just curious about what's getting funded, using something like KBZ or tracking the flow of money to funded companies is a great start. The final learning I wanted to say here in KBZ is I want to just briefly talk about some of the movement with money. So recently, so I'm going to search, have any companies created a reactor? There are two major innovations that I've been seeing in the energy space. So you'll see here, have any companies created a reactor? You'd be surprised to know that they have these modular nuclear reactors. And KBZ will tell us the companies that are creating them. One of them is Antares, a Spanish company. They've built a modular microreactor. And I do believe they're talking about nuclear reactors here. Also, Radiant Nuclear developed a semi-sized reactor. And both of these rounds of funding have been in just this month in December. Before that, I had done a video recently about fusion. That are in fusion. And the deal with fusion is this, like there was some major innovation in 2022 and then billions started to flow into the space. And so you can see here, any companies that are in fusion, you're going to see Commonwealth Fusion System, which raised nearly $3 billion. So a lot of movement, specifically in the space of energy. I titled my video about fusion, unlimited clean energy, and I'm not sure if that's the case, but suffice to say there's investment energy investor excitement surrounding mini nuclear reactors and fusion broadly. Close the video there. Thanks everybody for joining. It was a blast to create KrystalBallz. There are definitely some things I'd like to do with it. If you wanted to have access to the data that I've put together, if you wanted to make a commit or a PR on the product, I'll put the GitHub in the description below. One of the features I would love to add is about investment. What companies or what investors would be interested in my product, given that they've invested in other products that are on KBZ. So that's all I've got for right now. I stream daily. I also create YouTube videos, so make sure you subscribe, like, and share, and I'll see you homies soon. Peace.